Okay, so my name's Ethan, I'm 26, and last month I finished med school. You'd think that would be like the best day ever, right? The culmination of all the crap I went through. But instead of a party with everyone around happy for me, I just kind of sat there by myself. I remember holding my diploma, which felt heavier than it should have. It all started 6 months before I graduated. I was in the thick of things on my rotations, barely functioning when I got the word. The ceremony was downtown, and they were only giving each of us 6 tickets. I didn't even think twice about it. I booked 6 plane tickets. For my parents, my brother, his wife, and my aunt and uncle. Round trip. It cost a fortune, especially with no money, but it just felt right. I also booked a bunch of hotel rooms close by and put a down payment on a nice dinner at their favorite restaurant. After all the stuff we'd been through, the birthdays I missed, the holidays I spent studying or working nights, I figured this was the least I could do. A thank you to them for, just being there, to make up for missing out on everything. At first, everyone was stoked. My mom put it all over the family group chat, practically gushing with emojis. My dad was joking about getting his suit cleaned. Even my uncle, who's usually pretty quiet, shot me a thumbs-up emoji. It was a good feeling. It felt like they were finally seeing me. I should have known better, though. The first sign of trouble popped up about a month later. My aunt texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, Ethan, quick question. What's the refund policy on those flights?" I just stared at that message for a long time, that awful feeling in my chest returning, the one that always showed up when I had to deal with them. I replied carefully, trying not to sound crazy, non-refundable. But why? She left me hanging, and a week later my brother casually mentioned they were thinking about a family cruise, just throwing ideas around. He said it like it was nothing. When I asked when this cruise was supposed to be, he told me they hadn't nailed down any dates yet. Maybe mid-May, he added like it was no big deal. I reminded him that mid-May was my graduation. He just laughed it off. Yeah, we'll work it out. I tried to ignore it, told myself they wouldn't miss something like this. They wouldn't. 2 weeks before graduation, the truth dropped. I was working another late shift at the hospital when my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. It was short and cold. "We decided to go on the cruise instead. We're proud of you, but sitting through your fake success sounds miserable. Love you, fake success." I just sat there, my scrubs still gross from the day, reading those words over and over. Fake success. All those years of hard work, the whole college thing, plus those brutal nights in med school and the tons of free patient care, none of it seemed to matter. It wasn't considered valid. It didn't fit into the narrative they had created about me. I just didn't answer. I couldn't. Whenever I tried to write something back, my hands were just too shaky. An hour later, my uncle sent a text. It said, "We'll celebrate something that actually matters." For some reason, that one really stung. Maybe because he was the one I always felt got me. He used to give me science kits when I was a kid and tell me I was too good for this place. He was the first person I called when I got accepted into med school, the first person I thought would be there for me now. And he picked a cruise over me. That night, after I walked around my tiny place for hours, I made up my mind. It was a cold, sharp decision, and it just settled deep inside me. They weren't worth my effort anymore. The next morning, I called the airline and asked their return flights. It cost me a couple $100 extra in cancellation fees, but I didn't care at all. It was totally worth it. I also emailed the hotel, canceling all the rooms I'd booked, and the restaurant, using some BS excuse about family stuff. Then, just to be a jerk, I sent each of them a copy of my diploma. This real invitation, printed on fancy paper, came with a simple note. It said, "Thanks for showing me some things are better handled solo." Graduation day was freezing and gloomy, one of those gray skies that feel like they're about to burst into tears. I got ready in my cap and gown all by myself, took the bus downtown alone, and walked into that huge convention center all on my own. I watched everyone else, all those happy families and friends, snapping pictures, yelling and waving signs. It felt like I was watching it all from behind a glass wall, totally disconnected. My phone blew up texts, calls, voicemails, the whole 9 yards, but I ignored it. I knew exactly what they'd be saying, mad, confused, demanding answers. Maybe a few fake sorries after they realized they were stuck. But honestly, at that point, it didn't matter. When it was my turn, I walked across that stage, completely alone. No cheering, no cameras flashing, just the quiet thump of my shoes on the floor. I shook the dean's hand, got my diploma, and smiled for the picture, acting like everything was fine. But inside, everything was different. After it was all over, I walked outside into that drizzly afternoon. I pulled out my phone and saw 37 missed calls from Mom, Dad, and Aunt Kathy, all flashing angrily. I didn't even hesitate. I just shut the phone off. So I just stood there for a minute, breathing in the heavy air, and felt lighter than I had in ages. No plans, no responsibilities, no phony family pressure weighing me down. For the first time ever, I wasn't trying to please them. I turned and started walking, no place in particular to go, letting the city just absorb me. And that was only the start. The city was a whirlwind around me as I wandered, my diploma tucked under my arm like it was a life preserver. Cars honked, people bumped into me. I heard bits and pieces of conversations, but it all felt far away, like I was watching someone else's movie. I kept walking, past those fancy restaurants where families were all laughing and having a good time, past hotels decked out with flowers and balloons, past everything until the streets got quieter, the buildings older and the sidewalks all cracked and bumpy. I ended up in front of this little coffee shop where I used to study, back when all I could afford was cheap coffee and day-old muffins. It looked exactly the same. I just stood there for a sec, peering through the steamy windows, remembering all those nights hunched over my books at that wobbly table while life went on without me. No one celebrating, no one even paying attention. Nothing had really changed, huh? That thought cracked me up, a mean, dry laugh that made a couple jump. I didn't even care. I shoved the door open, grabbed the cheapest coffee they had, and slumped down at my usual wobbly table by the window. That's where, with the bitter coffee steam swirling in front of my face, my phone finally flickered back to life. The battery was almost dead, but just enough juice to show me the extent of the mess. 63 missed calls, 18 voicemails. A ton of texts, all from the people who decided my problems weren't important enough to mess up their vacation. At first, the texts were all angry. Mom was all, "What did you do? Where are our tickets?" Dad was like, "This isn't funny, Ethan, fix this now." Aunt Kathy, she called me childish and told me to grow up and call them back. Uncle Dave, he just said, "You're pathetic," short and sweet. But as time went on and they realized I wasn't answering, things changed. The anger turned to straight-up panic. Mom again begging, "We can't afford new flights, Ethan, please, we're stuck." Dad texted, "We don't even know where we are, the cruise leaves soon, we need your help." Even Aunt Kathy, who's usually a total pain and couldn't care less, sent a bunch of frantic messages. "I'm sorry, okay, please answer, we're stranded." I just stared at the screen, my coffee getting cold in my hands, and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no sadness, just this empty, drained feeling like a kind of relief. They were finally feeling what it was like for me my whole life. Left out, forgotten, completely alone while everyone else just went on with their lives. A tiny, mean voice in my head whispered, "Good, let them stew in it for once." But then another ding, another alert. It was a voicemail from my mom, just 20 minutes old. I paused, my finger hovering over the play button. I shouldn't have, but I hit it. At first, all I could hear was her shaky breathing, then her voice cracking and desperate. "Ethan, please, we're so sorry. We didn't think. We thought you'd get it. We didn't realize you'd go this far. Call me back, please, please. We can't afford flights. We don't know what to do. You're scaring me. You're scaring all of us." She just started sobbing. Before it ended, I leaned back in my chair, staring up at the gross ceiling tiles, and just felt it all crash down on me. I'd spent ages begging for their love, for them to be proud of me. I'd bent over backward, trying to be the son they could brag about at family gatherings. I paid for their trips, booked their hotels, made dinner reservations. All because a part of me still hoped that if I did enough, if I accomplished enough, they would finally see me. And they saw me, all right, just long enough to decide I wasn't worth the trouble. I grabbed my wallet and looked at the crumpled picture behind my ID. It was me, 8 years old, missing a tooth, beaming with a homemade future doctor badge on my chest. My mom took that picture. I remember her laughing, telling me, "Dream big, Ethan." Man, she totally didn't expect me to actually do it. My coffee was stone cold, the rain was coming down in sheets outside the window, but I didn't budge. I just sat there, listening to the city drone on and the phone keep ringing. I wasn't answering any of those calls. My family was stuck at some crummy motel near the cruise port, waiting for help that wasn't coming. And get this, for the first time ever, I didn't feel bad. I felt free, but still this little sharp ache started in my chest. It wasn't missing them, it was finally realizing they weren't really mine to miss in the first place. My phone buzzed again this time. It was Lily, my cousin. She's one of the few who's always had my back. Her text said, "Heard what happened. Come stay with me for a few days if you want. No pressure. Proud of you, Doc." I just stared at that message for ages before I finally typed back, "On my way." I grabbed my diploma, dumped the coffee, and walked right back out into the rain. My phone blew up again behind me, Mom calling, another message. But I didn't even look. By the time I got to the bus stop, it was pouring, soaking my gown, my shoes, everything. Honestly, I hardly even noticed. Each stride I took made me feel less weighed down, like I was shedding all these old pressures I didn't even know I was still holding on to. The city became a blur, neon lights reflecting in puddles, cars swishing by on the damp streets. Amidst all the hustle, I discovered I was smiling. Not a forced smile or a sarcastic one. It was genuine. I jumped on a bus that wasn't very full, headed towards Lily's place, clutching my diploma to my chest as if it would vanish if I didn't. The trip was silent, with only the engine's drone and an occasional cough in the background. It gave me time to actually think, to figure out what was coming. Because after this, there was no turning back. No making amends, no acting like this hadn't happened. And for the first time, I didn't want to fix it. I wasn't going to be the one to smooth things over, the one who silently carried all the pain because it was convenient for everyone else. They had made their choice. They chose a vacation over my future. They made fun of my goals and expected me to just accept it. They were the ones who showed me how to manage on my own. I was just finally paying attention. Lily was waiting for me outside her apartment with a huge, lopsided umbrella and an even bigger smile. She didn't say anything at first, just pulled me into a tight hug that somehow stole all my air and made the stinging behind my eyes even worse. She smelled like cinnamon and coffee, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, I hadn't lost everything after all. "You did it," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the damp fabric of my dress. "They can't ever take that from you." I just nodded, choking back a sob, completely unable to speak. I was a mess inside. She threw me a towel and a sweatshirt, then just let me collapse on her couch. No interrogation, no phony comforting, just this quiet knowing, the kind you don't have to explain to understand. We got some cheap pizza, put on a dumb comedy on Netflix, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I actually felt okay. Safe. It wasn't until midnight or so, when the downpour had eased up to a light sprinkle, that I even thought about looking at my phone again. And wow, was it blowing up. At first, it was the same old crap, angry demands, desperate begging, the whole guilt trip routine. My dad's texts started out furious like, "You're making a fool of yourself, grow up." Then they turned frantic. "We're almost broke, Ethan, you're destroying this family." My mom, always the dramatic one, sent this huge text that was basically a laundry list of excuses instead of an actual apology. "We didn't know it was so important to you. We thought you would get it. You're so serious all the time. We didn't think it would bother you. We just needed a vacation. You're still our son. Please call us back." Still their son, like that made all the other crap disappear. Then the group text started. My brother jumped in, playing the victim card. "You didn't have to cancel the flights. You didn't have to leave us hanging. You're being selfish. It's not a good look." Kathy, my aunt, chimed in with her opinion. "Family forgives," she said. "That's what families do. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Even Uncle Dave, the first one to make fun of me when things went south, texted me saying simply, "Enough, fix this." I sat on Lily's couch, huddled in my hoodie, reading their messages. It finally hit me. To them, I wasn't even a person. I was something they could use someone to brag about when it was convenient, someone to pay for things when they didn't want to, someone to quietly forgive them when they messed up. Because that's what a good son was supposed to do. It wasn't about me at all. It was about what I could do for them. Lily, curled up in the armchair, must have seen something change in me because she muted the TV. "What's going through your head?" she asked. I looked at her. She was the cousin who always remembered my birthday, even when everyone else forgot. She sent me care packages during finals and even drove 4 hours to bring me soup when I was sick. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that sometimes leaving is the real victory." A sad but proud smile spread across her face. She nodded. "You deserve better," she said, and I believed her. For the first time in my life, I really believed it. The next morning, the sun came up over the city, painting the cracked sidewalks gold. I sat down and wrote one last message. No anger, no yelling, no pleading, just 6 words. "I needed you, you weren't there. I'm done cleaning up the messes you made. Please just leave me alone, okay? I hope things work out for you, genuinely." Then I blocked their numbers, one after another. Mom, Dad, my brother, my aunt, my uncle. The quiet that fell afterwards was both overwhelming and amazing. It wasn't just my phone that went silent. It was my whole head, my whole heart. It was the noise from years of feeling guilty and obligated just vanishing, replaced by peace. Lily and I spent the rest of that weekend doing all the little goofy things I'd missed out on for ages. We got bagels from the shop around the corner, strolled through the park, argued about pizza toppings. She insisted we take a photo, a total Dr. Ethan selfie under a big oak tree, me holding my diploma up like I'd won a prize. It was the first picture in ages where I actually looked happy. I knew, though, that back at that crummy motel, my family was probably freaking out. They would call people, try to scrounge up some cash, figure out how to get home without me. They'd get by just like I had, but they'd do it without me this time. And for the first time, that thought didn't feel mean. It felt right. They'd shown me that family only meant something when it suited them. Now they'd get to see what that really meant. As I sat on that bench, warmed by the sun, drinking coffee that was way too sweet and watching Lily draw terrible drawings of the dogs that walked by, I also realized something else. I hadn't lost my family. I just finally figured out who they really were. You know, sometimes facing the hard truths, even when it stings like hell, is the only way to move on. So 2 weeks went by. 2 weeks of quiet that was both a relief and a kind of pain. During that time, I started figuring out how to breathe again, without always bracing for the next bad thing. I stumbled on this tiny studio apartment, just a few blocks from Lily. It was cheap, really small, but still felt like a mansion compared to what I'd been through. I signed the lease without even thinking twice, not running it by anyone to get there okay. I got a used couch, a mattress, and a couple of mismatched kitchen chairs. Hauling each thing up those awful stairs felt like I was getting back something they'd tried to steal. My freedom. My own life, myself. I really thought it was over. I thought I was finally free, but families like mine, they just don't let go easily when they lose their favorite target. It started subtly, an email from my mom's personal account. The subject line was just please, nothing else. Then a voicemail from my dad, which was creepy how calm it sounded. Son, enough is enough. You made your point. Come home and let's talk this through like adults. I just deleted both without a word. I hoped that would be the end of it, that if I ignored them long enough, they'd give up. But narcissists don't just disappear. They turn up the heat. About a week later, a certified letter showed up at my new place. No return address, but I knew, careful handwriting so tight. My mom's for sure. Inside, there was a typed letter, 3 whole pages of excuses that felt like they were mocking me. They finally admitted they messed up, the letter said. They knew they hurt me. They didn't mean to make my accomplishments seem small. Apparently, I was too sensitive. Too sensitive? Seriously. Like it was wrong for me to want my family at the most important day of my life. As if their actions were just a small thing I should have just gotten over. The letter went on and on about how I should forgive them, about family and duty, ending with a barely hidden command. They'd scheduled a family dinner this Sunday at my favorite place. Everyone was going to be there. They expected me to show up so we could just forget all of this. They expected me to come. Not a chance. I balled up the letter and tossed it, but I knew they wouldn't leave it at that. The following Sunday, Lily and I were fighting with an IKEA bookshelf when there was a knock at the door. Not a friendly one, either. It was a loud, demanding bang that shook the cheap door frame. I stopped what I was doing. Lily gave me a look, silently asking if I was expecting anyone. I shook my head. Lily and my family were the only people who knew where I lived. The banging continued, louder now. I hesitated, my heart pounding like crazy. But Lily was already walking over there and looking through the peephole. She muttered something under her breath and turned back to me, her eyes wide. "It's them," she whispered. "All of them. Mom, Dad, my brother, Aunt Kathy, and Uncle Dave all crammed into my tiny hallway. It was like one of those messed-up parade floats, only instead of pretty flowers, it was guilt and all that entitled crap. I just froze for a second, completely stunned. Then I took a deep breath and walked over to the door, real slow and calm. I didn't open it, though. I didn't even invite them in. I just yelled loud enough they heard me through the flimsy door, "You have absolutely no right to be here." There was this dead silence for a minute, then Mom's voice, all sugary and fake. "Ethan, honey, we just want to talk. Families shouldn't fight like this." I started laughing, a really ugly, hollow laugh that bounced down the hall. "Family," I said, the word tasting like burnt toast in my mouth. "Family doesn't just drop you to go on vacation. Family doesn't call your dreams stupid. Family doesn't only show up when they need something." Then Dad's voice, all rough and impatient. "You're being overly dramatic, son. Just open the door. Let's be reasonable." Reasonable. Like it was reasonable to expect me to just forget everything because it was inconvenient for them to take responsibility for their actions. "No," I said, just a simple no. Aunt Kathy chimed in, all shocked and horrified, like she couldn't believe the quiet, dependable me would ever say no to them. "No," I said again, slower this time, making sure they heard me. "You made your choices, you chose your cruise, you chose your pride. You don't get to choose me too." Then bam, something heavy hit the door, probably my brother trying to force it open. I heard him yell, "You're being selfish, you're tearing this family apart." I took a step back from the door, this weird, unreal peace washing over me. "Nope," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I'm not gonna be the glue holding together people who never cared if I fell apart." More banging, a storm of angry yelling, but I wasn't sticking around. I went back to the living room, plopped down next to Lily. We flicked the TV back on, some dumb sitcom. Fake laughs blared from the speakers while the real shouting went on outside. Finally, they quit. The hallway went quiet. They were gone. I didn't even check for another note. I didn't listen to whatever voicemails they probably flooded my phone with. I blocked their emails, their new numbers, everything. I made it so they couldn't get to me unless I let them. And I didn't. The next morning, Lily whipped up his famous pancakes. We ate them on the floor, amidst all the unpacked boxes and half-built bookshelves, laughing about nothing and everything. And for the first time, truly the first time, I felt completely, utterly full. My graduation wasn't about getting their approval anymore. It wasn't about the cheers, the Instagram pics, or showing off. It was all about me, the kid who used to dream in the dark, the kid who kept putting himself back together every time they tore him down, the kid who, despite everything, became exactly what they said he'd never be, a doctor, a survivor, a guy who finally picked himself. Afterward, I made a life I really loved. A few buddies from medical school and I started a small family practice. I also volunteered at free clinics giving back. And I mentored kids who reminded me of myself, kids who were hungry, determined, and totally ignored. Every year on the actual anniversary of my graduation, not the stupid date on the calendar, but the day I finally picked myself, I sent Lily flowers. As for my family, word got back to me that that fancy cruise they picked over me was a total nightmare. Storms, lost luggage, the works, even food poisoning. Talk about karma. They tried a few times over the years to worm their way back into my life. Guilty birthday cards, accidental meetings at things they knew I'd be at. But I never wrote back, never even acknowledged them, because some things aren't about burning bridges. Some bridges just crumble under the weight of people who never should have been on them to begin with. And when that happens, when the dust settles, you don't fix it. You walk away. You keep moving forward. You build new paths, better paths, paths that lead somewhere amazing, and you never, ever look back.